Hi, I'm Jan Ozer. I'm here today with Pete Moller from Access Advanced CEO and Dylan Zhou, who is the Senior VP of Licensing. We're here to talk about the video distribution patent pool. Thanks for joining me, guys.
Yeah, no, thanks, Jan. Thanks very much for having us.
My pleasure. So, Peter, why don't you give us a quick update? Tell us about, when the pool started, what codecs it covers, and what activities it covers.
Sure, sure. Again, thanks, Jan, for having us. So, the pool, as you know, we launched the pool in January. We had mentioned during that time that we had a 6 month incentive period for what we call founding licensees and licensors. The pool covers four what we define as modern video codecs: VP9, AV1, HEVC, and VVC. And we cover internet streaming using those four codecs.
Okay, so just to be totally clear, you've got a patent pool for many of those codecs on the device side for a decoder mostly or primarily, and now this is targeting companies who are actually using the technology for streaming, encoding video, delivering it, and playing it back.
Yes, that's correct. We cover both the processing. You're right. We have a device program, both our HEVC and VVC, and Sysville has a device program for AV1 and VP9. This program covers the processing and transmitting of video utilizing one of those four codecs. So they're complementary. There's no overlap between the two programs. They're complementary to our existing programs.
Okay, so we've got the royalty rate up on the screen. Why don't you take us through it?
Yeah, so we have a tiered structure that we have developed that I will say has gotten really a lot of positive impact from the industry. But we have 7 tiers in essence. We have a royalty waiver tier. We have a base tier which we proportionally adjust from tier 1, and then we have tiers 1 through 5. And we show the monthly rates for each of those tiers. And what we do is we look at 3 criteria. We look at average monthly active video users, typical social media site, average monthly video subscribers. Think about a streaming entity such as maybe a Disney or a Netflix. And then we look at semi-annual streaming revenue. And I would say we don't expect this criteria to be utilized often. It's there for more of the outlier cases. So we look at those three criteria. Wherever the highest tier that applies to you based on those 3 criteria would be the tier that you would pay and you would owe a royalty for.
Okay. Just for sizing purposes, and you may know this, you may not, but how many tier 5 companies are there? I mean, are there 20? Are there 2? I mean, seems like a really big number.
It is a big number. Today there's 2, maybe 3, depending on kind of where people are. Not everybody reports 100% on these factors, but 2 or 3 we would expect, say, over the next 5 years. You're probably talking 4, maybe 5 companies that might reach this tier, during the term of the agreement.
Okay, and that's what, 61, 62 million a year at that level?
Yeah, it's 62. I'm
No,
sorry, it's
63.
63. Yeah, it's 63 million for the on an annual basis, right?
Okay, and just for perspective, you've got the effective rates for each metric in terms of per user. Why don't you walk us through that?
Yeah, so this is really just for really to kind of show how frankly reasonable these rates are. So if you look at the rates that we just showed you and you put this into an average monthly active user rate, you're talking about in the first column, let's say a tier 3, you're talking 1.16 cents a month. So a fraction of a penny per month on region 2, and 0.11 cent per month, for instance, a tier 2 in region 2. So we're talking fractions of a penny on an active monthly active video user per person rate. For video subscribers, again, look at tier 3, you're talking 1.6 cents in region 1. You're talking 1.6 and 0.8 cents for a monthly video subscriber. And if you get down to a tier 5, it's even far less than that. And even our base tier, the most you would pay would region 1 to be 3.65 cents and 1.82. So very, very, very reasonable rates at either a monthly active user perspective or a monthly video subscriber perspective. And then you can see the percent of streaming revenue is also exceedingly low in the unlikely event that that's a criteria that relates or applies to you, your company.
Okay, just for perspective, I guess when the HEVC Advanced Pool launched back in 2015, I guess that you were looking at a 0.5% revenue. Was
Yeah,
that?
that's right. Yes, that was correct.
Okay, and that was for device. This is obviously for content. So what's the incremental adjustment option?
So one of the problems you have with a tiered structure, and maybe we'll go back to the next, thanks, with a tiered structure is that, when you go one over the next tier, you're paying that full additional tier rate. And so one of the things we tried to do is we looked at that and, recognized that as a problem. We still believe that the tiered structure, and frankly our licensors, our licensees, everyone we've talked to likes the tiered structure, likes the single fixed rate. But to solve that problem of, the just going over and paying a lot more, going from one tier to the next, what we allow somebody to do is, for instance, let's say you just went over, you're at 501 million in tier 2. So you just went, let's say last year you were 450 and now you're 501. So you've gone from a tier 1 to a tier 2. Rather than charging somebody the full rate of 1.75 for that incremental, kind of jump just above the tier, what we would allow somebody to do would be to pay the tier 1 rate and then pay the per user amount in that tier 1 amount, in that, the effective per user rate. So in something like this, where you had, say, 501 million, your royalty might go from 1.167 to, maybe it goes up to, 1.2, something like that. Far lower than you would otherwise go up to the 1.75 on tier 2. What, in essence, at a macro level, until you get about 30% into a tier, it's cheaper to use this incremental rate adjustment. Once you get about 30%, then it's going to be equal and cheaper to go and pay the full, next tier rate.
Okay. Are there any exclusions, say government, church, education?
Well, the expectation is that the royalty waiver, I mean, if you look at those numbers, 1.14 million active users, 114,000 subscribers. In our mind, that covers pretty much everybody. Haven't really thought, we don't intend to go out, to seek royalties from governments. Haven't really kind of thought about it, but that's not generally what, that's not something we've ever done. It's not something I would expect that we would do. As far as those other two institutions, I would expect that our royalty waiver would apply, which is why we did the royalty waiver. We don't want to be seeking royalties from, small entities, period, whether they're a church or education or not. We feel that those, should not bear that royalty burden, as these are not generally for-profit institutions.
How many companies worldwide hit the minimum, do you think? Is it 10,000, 1,000, 2,000?
Oh, Dylan, you got a estimate for that? It's got to be hundreds, but it's got to be several hundred.
So what did you mean by minimum? Yeah.
Well, I mean, how many companies need to be concerned about getting a call from Dylan.
Oh no, the team is not just me, and we have several licensing executives, so it's likely not me. But I would say, your personal websites, the church, your local, elementary school or high school, would never, hear from us.
Yeah, I mean, I guess I'm looking to just
It's
understand.
probably
Yeah,
about
we're going to,
yeah, I can tell. I mean, look, our initial set of letters that went out was about 100. I'm going to guess there's maybe 200, 250 people max. I'm going to guess it's more like 100, but somewhere between 100 and 250 is probably what you're talking about as far as the number of companies that would need a license.
okay.
Yeah,
So
I would
that's,
agree. I would agree with that estimate. Yeah. I mean, I think, from tier one, there are maybe 30, 40 companies max that are tier one, and then everybody else would be base tier or royalty waiver. So,
okay. And then just to be clear, I think you mentioned this, it's any or all codecs. If I use 4 codecs, I don't pay any more than if I use 1.
Yes, yep, that's one of the one of the, I would say again, like our tier structure, a very favorable feature. But yes, you can use all 4. You can use just 1, 2, 3, 4. It doesn't matter. Any mix that you have doesn't matter. You don't have to. You're not going to pay additional royalties because you want to try VVC, for instance, or you want to try AV1. It's one rate for all 4 codecs.
Okay. So could you explain the royalty adjustment ladder to me? Let me pull you to the page.
Yeah, so one of the problems you have when you start a patent pool, or not problems, but one of the things you need to do first off is in establishing a royalty rate, you need to estimate the percent of royalty stack, we'll call it for lack of a better term, but the number of patents that your pool will achieve. And of course, you don't ever achieve that on day one. It can take, it can take many years to achieve that. Look at our HEVC pool where we launched in 2016 with 5 licensors, and over time we now have like 45 licensors, and we went from 10% of the stack to 75 to 80% of the stack. In that one, I'll just mention that we established our rates at about 40% of the stack, and we're now at 80. So people are essentially paying, a 40% rate and getting 80% of the stack. In this situation, we set our rates at about a 60% level of the stack, 55 to 60% of the level. But again, the problem you have is you never get everybody on day one. So what we've done, I think, is a quite effective mechanism is we've essentially established a top number of 75 points, and we give each of our licensors points based on number of patents owned, contributions, enforcement record, ecosystem influence, etc. It's basically a scale of 0.5 to 5. And right now, and if you look at our HEVC and VVC pools, or HEVC pool, we have like 100 points as a comparison. So in this pool, we said 75 points is when we get 75%, you'll pay 100% of the royalty rates that we set forth earlier. Until that time, however, we adjust the numbers. So, for instance, at the end of June, we had 55 points. And so we will adjust 55 divided by 75 is 73%. So we will adjust the royalty rates that people owe, essentially will multiply by 0.73. So you get a 27% essentially discount because we don't have the full number of licensors that we expect to have and that we based our royalty rate on. So this protects companies. This is the whole problem you have with licensees who don't want to join early in the program because maybe there aren't a number of licensors that the rate reflects, and licensors are the same in essence. This works for them because they get essentially the same per royalty, per patent royalty. So it's an adjustment we do. I hope that wasn't too kind of long, but it's an adjustment we do that reflects the number of licensors in the program. Again, we're at essentially 73% already. We exceeded our estimate of 45, so we're very pleased with that. And we expect to be at the full ladder, quite frankly, by the end of the year. I'd be very surprised if we hadn't, met or exceeded that by the end of the year.
So at the full ladder, what percent of the overall patent stack do you have for all four patent pools or all four codecs?
Right, right. Our estimate is about 60%. And the thing I would also note, of course, is frankly, we expect to far exceed 75 points, just as we've done with our other programs. And of course, the rate doesn't go up when we exceed 75. It's not, we're not going to, there's no incremental adjustment beyond 75. That's just an additional benefit that the licensees will receive.
So so I'm guessing everybody from, or almost everybody from your device pools or in your content pool, what's been the response from other patent pools? I mean, Avanci has their own, they're competing, so they're not going to join. But what about Sysfel? What about VLA? What kind of participation from patent owners in their pools?
Well, so Via LA has previously made a statement saying that they were not planning on launching a video content program. So they've decided apparently not to go forward with this, which frankly, I think was a good decision. Two pools I think is enough right now. And Sysfel also has a device program and has not, to my knowledge, has not expressed any any expectation to move forward with a video program. So I believe it's really ourselves and Avanci that are the two programs out there for the marketplace to look at and decide which best meets both licensors and licensees needs and expectations.
What about the patent owners in the Sysfel and VLA pool? They can certainly make a decision for themselves to join the Access Advanced pool, can't they? On the
yes,
content side.
I mean, yes, of course, and frankly, if I looked at, I did a little analysis earlier, but essentially already half of all of the Sysfel licensors in their two programs have joined our program, and if I look at the if I look at Avanti's program, I think it's 14 or 15 of 36, so almost half of them, of the Avanti licensors, have already joined our program as well. And we have MPEG via LA licensors that have joined as well. So there's no restrictions for anybody to join our program from these other programs.
So where do you think you'll be? I mean, there's always going to be companies that prefer to license bilaterally. Nokia, obviously prominent among them, but what's it going to look like in 2 years? I mean, I don't want you to predict what's going to happen to Avanci, but I mean, if I decide to use these codecs, I'm going to pay you, pay Avanci, I'm going to be paying one or two bilateral, or do you think they'll only go after the biggest of the big as well?
Yeah, so I can't speak to obviously what maybe a Nokia will be doing and kind of how far down the food chain they go to make it worthwhile for them. As far as the two pools, I think there's still an opportunity, quite frankly, for there to be a one-stop shop. I'm not aware of Avanti having any licensees yet. So I think it's an opportunity for the industry to kind of rally around and I would hope, potentially take a look at our pool. We've already got 4 very, very substantial licensees that are in the program that very much support the program. We're talking to many others. So I'm not convinced that, a one-stop shop is not possible. And I hope licensees are willing to move forward, because I think to some extent licensees, will in essence kind of create their future. If they join us, I think there's a good chance that we could prevail as a one-stop shop in this market segment.
Who are the 4 licensees that you're announcing?
Yeah, so we have ByteDance, which of course is one of the very largest in the world social media companies. We have Tencent, another a huge, very significant social media company and subscription company. We have Kuaishou, who's a substantive, again, same social media subscription company, and then we have NTT Docomo, the very large and preeminent Japanese company. So we have 4 to date. We're talking to many others, as you would expect, and we're very hopeful that we'll be adding to that list, substantially adding to that list over the next 6 months.
What of the 4 companies that you mentioned, how many of those are licensors as well?
They're all licensors as well.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, what were the incentives for, how were they set up? I know that you had a big deadline yesterday. What was set up for yesterday in terms of reducing the royalty, and what's the next big milestone for reducing the royalty?
Yeah, so the milestone was 25% through June 30th. There's another milestone or another discount at 12.5% that right now goes through June of next year, and we'll continually look at this. The June 30th, that 6-month period was relatively short. When you look at it, but right now there's a 12.5% reduction, which is reflected in the slide deck that we showed. And after that period, that 12.5 discount would go away.
When does the clock start ticking? So when do royalties start under this pool?
Oh, so royalties start effective January 1st of this year. So the companies that join as licensees will pay for the first half of this year. Licensees that come in next quarter will owe past royalties for that first half of this year, as well as frankly they'll owe past royalties for prior use as well. So that of course is something that we talk to them about, but right now it's essentially an ongoing royalty started as of January 1st of this year.
Okay. Any other licensees that you're not disclosing at this time, or just the 4 that you mentioned?
There's just the 4 that we've mentioned that have crossed the line. We are in discussions with, as I mentioned, many others, and I would expect by the end of this year, again, we will substantially add to that list.
Okay. That's all I have. I know you're busy talking to companies, so I guess I'll let you go. This is, is it fair to ask you what the response has been? I mean, it's nobody likes paying taxes of any kind, but is this something, I guess with the environment of lawsuits out there, I guess everybody has seen this coming for the last 18 months. Are they just happy to finally understand what the numbers are, or what's your sense of that?
So 2 things. First off, I should mention, we've already have 31 licensors that have joined. So we're very pleased with that. The reception that we've had has been, I would say, on a scale, has been very positive. I mean, look, nobody wants to, nobody wants to pay a royalty, but I think the industry understands that. It's time for them to contribute to the ecosystem. And so the responses that we've been having have been generally very positive, and especially about the structure of the program. Nobody that we've spoken to, has said anything other than praise for the structure of the program. Rates, sure, people would still like the rates to be a little bit lower. To some extent, we share that. Of course, our licensors make the decisions on rates. It's always a balance, and I think what I've heard in the marketplace is, I think licensees recognize that there's that balance. If you have rates that are too low, you're not going to get licensees to come on board, and the program, it fails and it doesn't do anybody any good. Obviously, rates too high. And you're not going to get licensees. So I think we've got that, kind of that perfect spot in the middle. Everybody's a little bit unhappy. But it's kind of where you need to be. And, so we've had a very positive response. Anytime you launch a program, there's a little bit, everybody kind of wants to wait to see what happens. Now that we've launched with such a great result in the first 6 months, I'm pretty confident, and and I know Dylan is as well. We're both very confident that the next 6 months will be exciting, and we'll have an opportunity to create, again, what I'll call a one-stop shop for video streaming.
Okay. Listen, Pete and Dylan, I appreciate you taking the time. I know you're both busy guys at this point, and good luck with the pool in the next few months.
Yeah, no, thank you. Thanks, Jan, for taking the time to talk to us. Appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, keep in touch.